Good to be here. Always a pleasure to see you, Tony.
Well, good. Well, I've been following you lately, and where should we start? On the economics, maybe? Uh, the
Let, let me
symposium
let,
you
me- let
had?
me just let me just tell you. I just had an extraordinary interview with a guy this morning who's a Muslim, who's interested in Muslim Catholic alliance against the evil empire. And
Okay.
it turns out, guess where he's from? Bosnia.
Oh, good.
He speaks fluent Croatian. He was a translator during the war in Croatia. So we this suddenly this whole new he's got 1 million followers. I assume primarily here in the United States. I didn't know there were that many Muslim followers here. It's a whole new uh, horizon here, and he was engaged in a conversation with Charlie Kirk.
Oh,
And
that's interesting.
so Charlie Kirk is this guy who doesn't know anything. He's like a typical American. He's 18 years old. He starts this operation going around to campuses and engaging in discussions. And suddenly the money starts pouring in. So he's got $2 million a year from the Shillman Foundation. The Shillman Foundation is the main source of Muslim bashing in the United States. Okay, he pays people to attack Muslims. And so Charlie just kind of slips into it. It's just part of being an American. You know, I don't know a damn thing about Muslims, but I know I don't like them. I don't know where they come from, but they're bad people. And he just slips into this natural kind of conservative, anti-Muslim, uh, frame of mind. So this guy, Eddie, his name's Eddie Dean. Eddie Dean contacts him and says, basically, you're slandering my religion. And on top of that, you don't know what you're talking about. And so why don't we have a private dialogue? So at this point, they have this private conversation that's not on in public or anything. And Charlie admits to Eddie, he doesn't know anything about Islam, nothing whatsoever. And at this point, he's probably 23 years old. So what 23-year-olds don't know anything about anything, especially if they're Americans. And so they're heading in this direction. And then, unfortunately, Charlie is still being a Muslim basher in public because at this point, he's getting $2 million a year from the Shillman Foundation. Okay. So now we're heading up to the present here, 48 hours before Charlie Kirk is murdered. The Shillman Foundation pulls the money. 24 hours. So at this point, he tweets. This is the latest news here on Charlie Kirk. Candace Owens tweeted the group chat in which Charlie Kirk is saying, I've had it with these Jews. They're impossible to work with. I'm not going to support the Jewish cause anymore. That's 48 hours. This is after Shillman pulls his money, after Bill Ackman had him down at his house on the Hamptons, read him the Riot Act in August. 24 hours, the night before he's murdered. Another guy on the group chat by the name of Josh Hammer. These are all supposed to be his friends, right? He retweets something something that Donald Trump said in 2013. And he said, Donald Trump said, it's time to bring back public executions. Within 24 hours, Charlie Kirk is dead.
Hmm.
Now that's
Wow.
the state of the art right now in the United States of America. That's where it stands right now. It's all on X. After Candace was sort of on the ropes because she was making claims about the shooters not on the roof and this. She shut all her critics up as soon as she printed that group text. where Charlie announced that he's had it with the Jews and he's going to not support the cause of Israel anymore. That's where things have changed. The other thing that happened is Tucker Carlson did an interview. I don't know whether you saw this one, where he starts off. Let me backtrack a little bit. Do you remember the memorial? Did you see the Charlie Kirk memorial?
No, I did not see it.
Okay, well, they hold a big memorial. His body's still not cold, and before he's been buried, I think it was 10 days after he's dead. They hold this huge memorial. They had 80,000 people or something like that in a football stadium coming for this thing. And Donald Trump spoke, and then Tucker Carlson spoke. Tucker Carlson gave this weird speech where he talks about, he says, one of my favorite stories is about these guys in a room eating hummus. And these are the people that killed Christ, and they killed him because he was telling the truth. And then he burst out laughing. It was really weird what he said. At that point, I tweeted, I said, in plain language, Tucker Carlson just said that the Jews killed Christ because he told the truth, and that they killed Charlie Kirk for the same reason. Now, every Jew on the internet agreed with me for once. They all said that's what Tucker Carlson is trying to say. So Tucker Carlson immediately goes on, emergency, like this emergency tweet, urgent tweet. I never said that. I said, of course you never said that, but that's what you were really saying. You thought you could be clever. When I tweeted that, what he said in plain language, I got 1.3 million tweets, 1.3 million views within 24 hours, because everybody knew that's what he was saying. So now the situation is that he comes on again now and he says, well, we're stuck. There's two groups here. There's the Taliban, by which he means the Jews on the one side, and then there are the anti-Semites on the other. Never defines anti-Semitism. And they're both wrong. And he says, the point now is it's not about the Jews. And then he brings Jeffrey Sachs on, the Jew Jeffrey Sachs on, and Jeffrey Sachs says, Tucker, you're absolutely right. It's not about the Jews. Well, yes, it is. At the very moment that the circumstantial evidence is converging here to make it clear, everybody now thinks, especially after Candace's tweet, everybody now thinks the Jews killed Charlie Kirk. Go on X, go on any place on X. Go on X and type in honeypot, and you'll see all the background of his wife and what she was doing before she met Charlie Kirk. She met him in Israel. Donald Trump arranged the meeting. And at the meeting, she said, I don't want to work for you. I want to be your girlfriend. I want to go out on a date with you. So that story is growing too, that she was an Israeli honeypot who was brought into the organization because Charlie had a huge following among that demographic, the 20-year-olds. The other thing that happened at the same time is that Jonathan Greenblatt goes on X and he announces for the first time since they have been doing polling, the ADL discovered that the younger generation is more anti-Semitic than the older generation. That's the first time in history that has happened. Within 24 hours of that, Kash Patel, the head of the FBI, kicks the ADL out of the FBI. They are no longer collaborating with the FBI. So this is all of the stuff that's converging right now around the Charlie Kirk story.
Well, you're living in interesting times.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not obviously there. I'm not American, but I follow occasionally your situation and in news. The murder of Charlie Kirk. I think it's the result is destabilization. I think it's an event that will hurt, well, the America's internal situation. You know, internal stability, and will complicate things politically. I'm sure of that.
Well, I think that I gave, maybe you saw my podcast, but I made the circumstantial, stated the case against Israel, simply the circumstantial evidence. The most important piece of circumstantial evidence in this regard was the day before Charlie was murdered, the Israelis murdered the negotiating team, the Palestinian negotiators in Doha. And then one of those homicidal fanatics came out and said, from now on, no place is safe. No one is safe. We will go anywhere to kill you. And then the next day, Charlie Kirk is murdered. I think that was the message. That's the context in which we have to view this thing. They have expanded the war. Okay, we're used to, if it's an Iranian, they killed all those Iranian nuclear scientists. They assassinated, but that's Iran, okay, and they're our enemy. And then all the other targeted assassinations, well, that was Palestinians, or that was Syrians, or that was Hezbollah. Now it's the Palestinians in Doha, which is Qatar, is a United States ally. So they violated that. And then Donald Trump made Netanyahu apologize to the Qatar president for attacking there. They are expanding this war. This war is now taking place in the United States. This is a targeted assassination of Charlie Kirk because he was leaving the reservation. He was leaving he's not going to support Israel. He took millions of dollars in Jewish money. And they're not going to let him walk away from the table with all that money and then start criticizing Israel. This is the case right now. I think this is the way I'm articulating what is now the consensus in the United States, or at least on X.
If they did it, it's totally irrational, because you were asking why Cyprus, right? I picked you up in one of your podcasts asking why the people from Israel are buying up property in Cyprus.
Right.
So just to put the perspective, the air traffic above Israel was blocked for 6 or 7 days straight. Never happened before. So if you want to flee, if you want to escape, and the air is closed, where do you go? You go to Cyprus by boat.
How long does that take? How long would it take to get there by boat?
Daily. No, a number of people went that way. I know personally. I have a friend that his family did that trip with a commercial boat. So why I'm bringing this up is because after the 6th or the 7th day, it was, 6-7 days without the possibility to fly away. They started to depend on the US to resolve it,
Yeah.
And to do this kind of Charlie Kirk stuff, it's actually hurting the US internally badly. Yeah, in a way, hitting the guy that helped you out.
So what are you saying?
I don't know. I'm saying that it's totally irrational because.
Are you saying Jews are irrational? I agree with you.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ would agree with you. Everybody agrees that Jews are irrational. They're blind. They pursue their policy until it destroys them, and then they can't turn back. So I agree with you. They are irrational. The immorality is practical reason. If you violate morality, you are fundamentally irrational. That is their when you rebel against Logos, you are irrational. That is their identity. I have a big book that talks about this.
Yeah, I know. I know. Yeah. Well. Did Trump commented about it?
No.
Was the
Actually, Trump has been, he's not in charge of the situation anymore. Someone just wrote, Cy Hirsch, as a matter of fact, Seymour Hirsch is the famous journalist who did the My Lai story. when Cy Hirsch would write an article, it would appear on the front page of the New York Times. He was number one journalist in the 1970s. Did the My Lai massacre, did the piece on blowing up the pipeline. He is now saying that Trump is non compos mentis, that he's losing his mind. And you can tell by the way he's constantly repeating old stories, like old men do, like me. Well, I just keep repeating the same story over and over and over again. So he, I think, is no longer in charge of the situation. Now, on the other hand, he keeps saying that there's going to be a ceasefire in Gaza and that he's going to force Netanyahu to back down and they're not going to take over the West Bank and all this other type of stuff. So the situation is not clear in terms of Trump.
So no comments basically from him about Charlie Kirk.
Have you heard anything that Trump said about Charlie Kirk? Nothing. No, I haven't. He hasn't said any. No, wait a minute. Obviously, he was at the memorial service. So he gave a eulogy at the memorial service. He obviously was aware of it. But as of now, he's not keeping up with the turn of events that's taking place right now. He's not keeping up with that. He's on to other things. I don't know what he's on to, but so the man who's in a bind here is Kash Patel, because the FBI has already claimed that there's a certain story now. They apprehended some guy. Well, nobody believes that guy shot Charlie Kirk anymore. Nobody believes that. There are too many other more plausible stories. So I think that Kash Patel kicked out the ADL to basically give himself credibility with what is left of the MAGA people, at least the America First part of the MAGA people, and to distract the fact that his case against the shooter is falling apart.
Well, the guy that's arrested as a suspected shooter, he made any statements? What does he say?
No. Didn't they say he was suicidal? They announced that he's suicidal. That's the first step before they kill you. That's exactly what happened to Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein was not suicidal. He was strangled by somebody. But then once the whole playbook was created with John F. Kennedy. So you frame a patsy, a fall guy, and then you kill him. And that's the end of the story. So I think that's where they're heading with this kid. They tried to pin it on transgender people because everybody hates them. And it was and they have this reputation of, shooting up grade schools, things like that. They've done it. We're a very violent group of people. But it doesn't fit the details of this story. The transgender guy will buy a bunch of automatic weapons. He'll walk into a school and start shooting at random. This was one bullet or whatever it was. One thing killed Charlie Kirk. It was professional assassination team. And so that's where the investigation should focus. Apparently, I heard that Charlie had just rehired his old Israeli security team. If that's in fact true, it seems pretty clear that his security team killed him. They would be the prime suspects in this story. But, when I start talking prime suspects, that's legal jargon, which means you have to have some type of legal investigation. I don't see it. I don't see it happening.
Okay, so what's the Bosnian translator and the Muslim guy says about all this? You started up the meet with this guy.
He didn't say anything about what I'm just saying. He made contact with Charlie. They had a private conversation where Charlie admitted he didn't know anything about Islam, and they were going to follow it up with a public interview, and that never happened. But after the private interview, Charlie went back to the old Muslim bashing thing. So that's where it stood. It never got any farther than that. There was no meeting of the minds. And that was, I think that was years ago. I think it was like 2 or 3 years ago where they made contact and then after a short period they broke off contact. Didn't happen. So he never went down that road because at that point it was, well, it's obvious. If you're a Republican, if you're getting Jewish money from the Stillman Foundation, you have to portray the Muslims as the villains in this drama.
Yeah, well, there is now increase in this Muslim bashing in Croatia too. You know, like there is all kind of stuff. Like this one guy that's very, let's say, famous religion professor. Uh, he was having like Catholic religion classes in school, and then he went into politics. He's still politically active. He's like the Catholic guy. So after the attack on the Hamas attack on Israel, well, he goes to visit Israel, and it's all paid by some unknown person or entity there. He makes some comments from there. He comes back, you know, at home, and now after everything that happened in Gaza, his statement was like, "Okay, we have to, you know, recognize Palestine, but not yet. We have to wait until Hamas disappears. We have to wait for Hamas to go away. Then we should recognize it."
Now, is this man does he have political office right now?
Yes, yes, he does.
He's a member of the parliament?
Yeah, but he's in like a minority opposition, so not really relevant in
Okay.
that way. But he's relevant because he was seen as the most Catholic politician out there. You know, he was the Catholic politician guy, and it's hard to justify that kind of statement, knowing that the Vatican recognized Palestine like what 20 years ago, not 20, but almost 20 years ago.
Look, he got paid to go to Israel. He's taking Jew money. It's that simple. The Shillman Foundation would pay for anybody, any influencer, to go to Israel. They're notorious for doing that. Once you become a politician, how many? Something like 200 American politicians were over in Israel. They all flew over in one big plane or something like that. They're notorious for doing this. As soon as you have any type of following, either in political office or as an influencer, they will offer you a free trip to Israel, and then you're on the payroll after you come back.
Well, yeah.
Has anyone said this? Has anyone said this in public in Croatia? Has anyone accused the guy of taking?
No, actually, no. We have a really strange situation now because, okay, if you're a Catholic, you kind of look up to the Vatican as some kind of a role model, and well, the Vatican diplomacy was very reluctant to recognize Israel. It actually recognized Croatia before it recognized Israel. And then maybe 10 years after, they already recognized Palestine as a state. So, and they condemned the IDF behavior many times, so it's much more or less clear. So if you're a Croatian Catholic, that's like your that should be your idea of world politics, but they kind of shy away. And on the other side, you have this more secular nationalists, like the not as pious nationalists. The story there is even harder because they have a history in the Second World War of this secular right, this secular nationalist party. They were allies with the Muslims. they have, you know, like joined troops, and they fought the Second World War together. So you have now you have like kind of, you know, you have now, let's say, this friendly signal, friendly clues with Gaza and with the Muslims in general, and then yet you have both sides that have a lot of reasons to, you know, take a side in this fight, picking the wrong one.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you always find some kind of a monetary incentive there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, when you start attacking Muslims as a Croatian, you can reignite the civil war because the Muslims are an armed force there. That I was in Mostar in was 96 or 90, I think it was 96. The bridge had been blown up. That's when the Croats turned on the Muslims and drove them across the Neretva River. And
Yes, it was. It was. The okay. Let's say the short history there. First, you have the Yugoslav army attacking Slovenia. It was very short war. It was called the Operette War here. It was like a 10-day war or something like that. Then it turned to Croatia. It started in the 90s and it lasted until 95. And I think it was 92, the war started in Bosnia. In the beginning, the Muslims and the Croatians were like, Muslims wanted to be neutral because they were totally unprepared for that. But in the beginning, when the fights were going on, they were allied with the Croatians. And in 93, so it was 3 years after the war in Croatia, and I think a year or two after the war in Bosnia, there was this turn in this basically huge, like a huge rift when the Croats and the Muslims, but only in Herzegovina, turned against each other. So there is some Croatians that are claiming that it was all caused by a massacre in a single village, and it was done by some kind of a British covered special forces.
Are you talking about Račak?
Ahmići. No, Račak is a different thing.
Okay.
Račak is the Serbs and Albanians. But this was the Ahmići massacre, and some Croatian guys are claiming that it was done by the UK's this special forces team with the intention, you know, to start a war between the Croatians and the Muslims.
Yeah.
So it obviously worked, or I don't know. I guess it's impossible to verify, but the war did start in 93, and the war ended in Bosnia in 1995 after the Croatians and the Muslims, let's say, buried the axe and, you know, made peace. They formalized an alliance. Then the Croatian army entered in Bosnia, and they basically defeated militarily the Serbs. Almost defeated militarily the Serbs. The Serb capital was in the range of, you know, Croatian artillery, and then the Americans picked up the phone and gave Croatians an offer. You know, they said, okay, if you continue and defeat the Serbs, we will put international sanctions and we will bombard you. But if you don't, if you stop this instance and you pull back, you will be a NATO member and blah, blah, blah. And so that's how the war in Bosnia ended. Basically, the Americans made sure that the Serbs don't lose it. Serbs got half of the Bosnia, and the other half that was divided between the Croatians and the Muslims. Croatians got maybe, I don't know, 10% or something like that, and the Muslims, let's say, the 40% of the state.
When did NATO bombard Belgrade?
5 years later, 4 years later. After you know, so Milosevic signed this treaty. It was Dayton Agreement that basically divided Bosnia half to the Serbs, half the other half to the Muslims, and Croatians are somewhere there. You know? So Milosevic was hailed like security, big anchor of security, and like the big peacemaker. It was he was an American guy from the beginning, but then he was basically saved by the US from losing the war in Bosnia. But then he did a mistake. He tried to take Kosovo militarily, you know, he sent tanks to Kosovo, and that was again that was well that was not 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 according to the U.S. plans, and they had to stop him. And that's the way they stopped. They stopped Milosevic and basically forced him to capitulate and to withdraw from Kosovo by bombarding civilians basically.
What is this man, the Catholic you just mentioned, the Muslim basher? What is his goal?
Well, his goal was it's all the same story. You know, in Croatia you have the mainstream media. They are not they dislike the Catholicism in spite of the Catholics being like 70-80% of the population. All the mainstream media outlets don't really like Catholicism or the values or anything. And in the political sphere, you have this, let's say, the right, anti-Catholicism, and the left. So, and he wanted to like recreate some kind of a genuine Catholicism, uh, like a real Catholic political option. And then he was flown to the Israel and then started giving statements there.
Well, every nationalist or every country in Europe who has a nationalist party, all of those parties had to make a deal with Israel. They had to make a deal with the Jews. So, like
Oh,
Maloney.
with Russia too. Now, these days there was this hey, it's interesting actually that most, let's say, this nationalist right, but okay, more on the far right end, uh, they are very pro Russian and pro Zionist at the same time. So and they also attended some conferences that were organized also in the, we can call it that, in the Russian sphere. So just just a fun fact. But on the left, you have this, also the similar situation. Also, an interesting thing. After the concert, we discussed the concert
Right. Yeah.
with
Yeah. We talked
Alexander.
about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. It obviously had a huge impact because even the New York Times published an article about the concert, and then it went on for months. This fallout from that, and then a journalist, a Croatian journalist, said, "Well, how can you accuse the singer of being fascist if he starts his concerts by we call it glory to God, basically. It's like Greece God. It's like a old Catholic salute that is not in use. You just say it when you see a priest or a nun. Okay.
Yeah.
So he starts his concerts with that phrase, and he writes about a big article about that and saying that he's not really he cannot be a fascist or something like that because he's acting as like a Catholic.
Right.
And then then the Jewish professor, the Jewish professor of history, like responds to that and said, no, it's not actually mutually exclusive. We all know that the church is, if it's not directly responsible, it has this implicit responsibility, especially the Catholic Church, and then you have basically this old, the Hitler Pope and that kind of propaganda.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Piling on. And what's also interesting about that professor, he's a history professor, and he's the guy basically that killed this secular humanist left. When the events in Gaza were going on, you have the first, well, everybody expected this secular leftist humanists to come out with a statement and to what happened. The same Jewish professor guy, he actually went on. They basically purged destroyed this secular humanist left by basically evicting the guys that were trying to condemn the situation in Gaza.
Okay.
Yeah. So you have on the one side you have the left acting out that way, and on the right you have also the same thing, but uh, it's in some strange way connected to Russia. I don't know. I don't know why. I mean, you can see that the same narratives are brought up by the same people. So this is like maybe it's just a Croatian phenomenon, but well, we have a particular country.
Where does Croatia stand with the war in the Ukraine now?
Well, the president is now the president of Croatia is in like the Hungarian Slovakian camp, and the prime minister is more in the like German, I would say, German and Polish camp. So
So the
that's the
government's
situation.
completely divided on the war.
Yeah, it is nominally divided because we have this strange half presidential system where the president takes care of some aspects of the foreign policy and a little bit of military, and he has an influence in the security apparatus. But all the other influence and the power lies with the parliament and with the prime minister. So the prime minister is a much more powerful person here, and the president is actually directly voted in office, but has way less power and way less authority,
Were
at
there
least operationally.
were there demonstrations for the flotilla in Croatia?
Actually, not as I know. Not as I know. The only demonstrations for Palestine were, I have to admit, came from the further left.
Because there were big demonstrations in Italy, and the
Yeah.
Italian dock workers refused to unload Israeli ships in Italian ports.
Yes, in Spain too. So it basically is this Catholic residual, feeling. So both the Spain and Italy and probably Poland, they all have this this historical Catholic culture, but they are forced to live in this let's say modernized liberal thing, and they can beaten up from the left, and their way to get it back at what they see as perpetrators is to go harsh on Israel. So it's very the situation in Ireland is pretty much exactly the example of the thing that I'm talking about. So you have this far let's say this leftist neo-Marxist agenda, but you have this unease and this historical Catholic residual feeling, and they kind of get it back by turning on to Israel.
Well, what about Croatia? Croatia's majority Catholic. Why aren't they
Yeah.
sharing? Why aren't they doing the same thing that's happening in Ireland and Italy?
Well, we are okay. Let's say we are not in Ireland. In Spain and Italy, you have this almost how to put it, almost this liberal dictatorship. If it's not a contradiction in terms. In Croatia, you still don't. You don't have you don't have these speech codes as enforced as in these other countries. It's not a society that is so ready to enforce liberalism as in Ireland. It's much more traditional, and the voters still cannot stomach all this most of the liberal agenda. So the politicians are still not. It's not as repressive situation as in Italy, Spain, and Ireland.
Hmm. Hmm.
So yeah, and the interesting thing also, if we can now touch to the flotilla and to Gaza, you had by listening all this Croatian, this right, let's say right nationalist guys, you would expect that the warship will come, from the Red Fleet, that it will be something from the Kirov class or something like that, and it ended up that it was Dago's in a ship, as you would say.
It was what? What did you say? What about the
It
ship?
was yeah, it was the only warships that were sent, somewhere there just to make a statement were the Italians, I think, and maybe the Spanish
Well,
as
the
well.
Italians, the Spanish, and the Turks all sent warships, but they didn't do anything. They didn't
Yeah,
do anything to protect the flotilla.
yeah, it was just a formal statement. They cannot do pretty much anything. Yeah, but you kind of miss that kind of a statement from the Russians that were like advertised as the ones in 2003. I think that Patriarch Kirill even bragged about it. That his country is the only thing that is stopping that, and that will intervene or help or blockade or whatever. That will have an active role there.
And didn't happen.
Yeah, didn't I?
Well, that's where things stand here.
Yeah,
Everyone's waiting. I don't know what's going to happen next, but that's where things stand right now.
yeah. If I can offer my view on the geopolitics and on the let's say this world map of influences. Well, as I said before, the EU is a Catholic project, so it's
Okay.
unlike most of the other states.
And
Well,
but
in
they
the
don't
case
believe
of
in
Gaza,
They don't.
yeah, in the
Go
case
ahead.
of Gaza, I mean they and as a result they are bashed from both sides. They are they are between the hammer and the anvil, I guess. The America and the Russia. The whole thing in Ukraine and all this, energy crisis, uh, this war, that war, it's like an intentional, let's say, dual attack on the European economy
I
and
agree. I agree. They used to say that NATO was to keep Russia out, keep Germany down, and keep America in. That was the whole purpose of NATO, and they're proving it with Germany. They are wrecking the German economy. In many ways, the war in Ukraine, the main attack was on Germany to
yeah,
destroy. First of all, get them to pay for the war, and then destroy their industrial base by blowing up the pipeline.
yeah, I agree that, but what happened in the meantime is that EU is now by population number, so by number of consumers, and by pure size of the market and pure economic numbers, rivals. It's on par with the US. So if you count the consumers in millions, and then the number of companies working there, it's there. It's basically, it's in economic terms, it's starting to be a threat. And
Yes,
on the other hand, the Soviet Union, of course, collapsed, and Russia, I mean, it's seen as a counterweight to the US, but in reality, it's you can see all this old world, this Cold War mentality basically fading. It's not just the American Republic that's falling. It's the entire world system arrangement that must go down with it.
yeah, yeah.
And for the America to stay in power, well, precisely some kind of a deal. So you have descending America, and you have also this collapsed Soviet Union. Then you have Russia trying to pick up the pieces and and put it on on the horse again. But you have like these two failing fading powers that need some kind of reform in some kind of agreement about around Ukraine. And to kind of back it up, I can tell from firsthand because Yugoslavia was a country that broke up with the Soviet Union and was rewarded by it. The Soviets were thinking about making some Czechoslovakia-style military intervention in Yugoslavia, and Yugoslavia got some substantial money, substantial material, and some substantial weapons. We are talking about thousands of jet fighters, thousands of tanks, and flotillas of 8. So, thank you guys. But if you compare it to Ukraine, you can see some kind of a deal that's pointing to Europe. That's basically, as I see it, some kind of a deal, to destroy the. Well, it's you can say Germany, but it's not just Germany. It's all the Germany plus the surrounding bloc.
Yeah. Well, Germany's the leader of Europe.
Yeah.
And so if you control them, then you control the rest of Europe. Have you ever heard of the man by the name of Alfred Herrhausen?
Herrhausen. Sounds familiar, but it's.
He was the head of the Deutsche Bank at the time, 1979. No, I'm sorry, 89. 89 when the Berlin Wall came down. He was murdered. He was assassinated. And they tried to pin it on the Baader-Meinhof gang. There was no Baader-Meinhof gang at this point. It had ceased to exist. And but the interesting thing is, he was going to come up with his own plan for credit and money for Russia, so that they could work together. I think that's why he was killed. He was going to forgive debt in the third world, and he was going to make an agreement with Russia that would have been for Russia's benefit, and it was destroyed so that the Jews could come in and loot Russia, which is what they did, led by the people at Harvard, including Jeffrey Sachs, to basically loot, steal all the natural resources and ship them off to New York. That's another example of a targeted assassination that never got explained. To this day, you can type in, you go to Google, there's a good documentary, and it's called Herrhausen Black Box. And you can go into the details of basically another attempt to cripple Germany. Anytime Germany starts to make peace with Russia, the United States or England steps in and murders whoever's trying to do it. That's the fundamental bedrock of American foreign policy. It's called the Mackinder thesis. And I think this was an example of how it worked, how they did it with Herrhausen. It's worth looking into.
Yeah, it was a British also play or thesis, if you want. But okay, but you still have the America as I see it as like a slightly fading empire, and on the other hand, you have what's the big country that's not, or like let's say the people that did not miss the train on the station, that's not on the station, that's in the train, are the Chinese. I think that both the US and the Russia should should see what's going on now with China. If you want in spiritual perspective, the fact that you have an American Pope, you have to thank to the Chinese, basically, because you have now a Chinaman that's riding the zeitgeist and basically electing a Pope. The guy was from Hong Kong, and on the conclave, the Chinese basically torpedoed the potential Italian diplomat Pope. and elected
Who?
leader.
Pizza Bala?
No Pizzaballa. The Parolin.
Parolin.
Parolin was,
Okay, yeah.
yeah, the
Okay.
first conclaves where the Parolin was started to go up in the votes, and then the Chinese guy, you know, raises the hand for a comment and accuses him of making a shameful deal with the Communist Party. And he backs it, and basically the Chinese, the Communist Party also has a blame because they basically elected two bishops in the period of sede vacante. So basically, while there was no pope, and the party chose two bishops in some kind of weird show of force. And of course, the conclave reacted and elected the opposite, the American pope.
Hmm.
And immediately after its election, uh, my Jewish friend immediately brags to me that his cousin, he graduated under this Jewish professor, and now he's very good with him. He has now a direct line to the Pope. So he is an American with all the baggage that it brings.
Huh.
So that's basically also at the root of his Tikkun Olam comments.
Yeah. All right. We've gone for an hour.
Okay, Mike. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the news. I really, if you get contacted by the guy that's been in Bosnia, let me know.
I will. I plan to go meet with him in Chicago. I'll keep you posted on where that goes.
Okay, here's a lot of historic experience and material about firsthand, Catholic Muslim relations and the future. So,
all right, I'll keep in touch.
Thank you. Peace.
Peace.
Bye.